Week 5 in the books. Just finished a couple hours ago. Had to jump in on this recap right away. We are going to change the recap up a little bit this week. Not much. We're going to be basically doing the same thing, but we're adding on the win percentage that every team has to win the championship this year at the end, the current state. And we'll do that every 4 weeks, let's say. So a few times this season. We're going to update it. Let's just jump right in. The order of the games this week are going to be Banditos versus the Prophet, Pain Train versus Chairman, Paco Libre versus El Capitan, TBD versus We Went with Jared, Straight Knockout versus Professor S. So the first game was between the Banditos and Team the Prophet. The Banditos, the last team who I believe didn't have a win, and a team that we did Dunchain. So let's fucking go. The Banditos getting a win, and you just have to want to tongue kiss AJ Brown right now after that performance to get you the win. AJ Brown with 21.2 points on Tuesday night to get you a win by 0.8 in a really tight game. Congratulations to the Banditos, keeping your season alive despite our Dunchain. And despite another Lamar Jackson average week. He benched Hines, which we've been begging for a bit, and really made all the right calls. Hindsight's 2020, but I would have went Gaskin over Shenault. I understand the potential with Shenault, but Gaskin's a starting running back, so I think moving forward I would make that decision. You're already playing another 3 wide receivers, so seems reasonable to me. Hopefully the Banditos makes us regret the Dunchain, but I do not currently. In the current win percentage, although in my head it's 0% because we Dunchained you, realistically the win percentage to take this championship home is 2.5%. If you could somehow beat that, then congrats. Best of luck to you overcoming the odds. But currently at 1-4, the Banditos sits at 2.5%. For Team the Prophet, a loss brings you to 3-2. We did say 2 guys who we think are the most undervalued this year are Will Fuller and David Montgomery. We've been saying that for a bit. Fortunately, the Team the Prophet did start both doing well. Montgomery with 19 points, Will Fuller with 16 points. The question marks around this team that came up were around things that were out of your control. So there's some lost values here. So first, I'll go to the things you can't control. So the first things are the RB2 spot is what the concerns around, and Singletary is too questionable at that spot. Only 4.3 points tonight. Just not too much promise, especially with Zach Moss coming back. That's a questionable one. And then Amari loses value because of Dak. So there's 2 guys who are going to be losing value naturally. So that's going to bring your team down a little bit from where it is currently. Then as far as what's in your control, you still have Rodgers. We've been begging you, flip Rodgers. You have Mahomes. You do not need Rodgers. A lot of other teams do need a better quarterback situation. Maybe you did check the value and people aren't willing to pay for him, even though they should. But Rodgers is a guy to flip to fill in that RB2 slot. I think Rodgers and Singletary for a running back like Gurley or just a better running back is very reasonable. And I think that's a trade that other teams should make. So that would be my focus for this team. But with that being said, 3-2, a lot of good things going on. Montgomery finally showing his value. I'm a little concerned that Le'Veon's going to go to the Bears, by the way. I haven't heard any reports. I just feel like that's a place that makes sense. But assuming that doesn't happen, this team gets 12.5% to win it all. So in a league with 10 teams, everyone at 10% if all else is equal, or at least from where you started. So clearly doing things right. 3-2 record above 500 and 12.5% to win it all, although that's an arbitrary number I made up. Clearly ahead of the curve right now, but not by too much. There's still moves to be made, and I think that Rodgers move is the one to make. And every week that goes by, I will continually say it until the move is made or until you just go on this crazy win streak. But right now with the loss, 3-2, I'm sure you're looking in the mirror and saying what else you could be doing to put your team in a better position. The next game, Pain Train with the win to go to 4-1. We love this team. In its current state, absolutely love this team, especially at the beginning of this week. But Dalvin's now banged up. He should be good, but I think he's going to probably miss 1 week before their bye. So that's going to be only a 1 week, kind of have to figure it out, or 2 week total, including the bye. Mike Davis is about to lose that value because of McCaffrey. So at the running back position, despite those 2 guys being great, and you have Aaron Jones on the bench, there are concerns, at least in the short term. So what I would do is either, I don't know about what I would do, but things to consider are Mike Davis. Maybe you trade him while you still have value for him. Maybe a team that needs to win now. You are 4-1, so you're in a pretty good spot right now. Do you trade him to get maybe value longer term for a team who really needs to win now? Or do you keep him knowing that that's going to fill in that Dalvin Cook kind of 2 weeks? You could pair him with Aaron Jones and you're still in a good spot. Both are good options. I definitely understand keeping him, but as far as just like what you could potentially do, that is something. It just stinks to have It's kind of like having a guy on an expiring contract when your team's tanking. It's, like, you want to give value for a guy while you can. But with that being said, Mike Davis will give you value for the next couple weeks. So I don't even know where I stand here. It's just kind of the only point to consider really for this team. Because outside of that, there's a lot of reasons to be happy for this team. The only thing I'm confused about also, by the way, is the empty bench spots. You could fill in 2 empty bench spots. I'm not sure why that wasn't made. But despite all of that, a lot of good things to think about with this team. DK Metcalf looking just fantastic. Mike Evans continually looking good without Godwin. And T.Y. finally showing the value that we know he has. Tight end position is frustrated with Higbee. I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, outside of all that, the win percentage for this team is 15%. Not only are they 4-1, but they have a lot of value. And the value lines up with the Mike Davis going away when you're getting Dalvin back and you get Aaron Jones for the rest of the season. So a lot of just good things going on with this team. 15% puts you at, I think that is the second highest for this league. So that puts you, in our opinion, at the second favorite to win the league. On the other side of that, the loss to the chairman goes to 3-2. And the question mark here, although you had an awful week, only 80 points, wouldn't have made any difference. We cannot fathom why you benched Derrick Henry unless because there's a Tuesday night game you were concerned. I don't know if I'm sure this league though has a rule about if that game gets canceled, but the rumors were that the game was going to happen. It really looked like it. Surprised you risked benching a guy like Derrick Henry. Instead of Derrick Henry, you play in the flex. Justin Jefferson only gets you 5 points. So that costs you about 15 points. Also at quarterback, you went Matt Ryan over Goff, which honestly, I'm not going to lie, I would have probably done the same thing, but that cost you 30 points also. So some things to look in the mirror about, and some things that you could have done better, but outside of that, you would not have won either way. There are wide receiver questions emerging with this team because McLaurin, with the new quarterback, is not looking great. DJ Chark also not looking great. So some of these guys who have a higher ceiling aren't really coming close to it. McLaurin, kind of this quarterback situation is something to look at. He did get 7 targets, but only 3 catches, 26 yards. Deontay Johnson getting injured, and Claypool emerging. So just a lot of wide receiver questions. I want to like this team more, and I do like it enough to say that I think there's a 10% chance. So right on par for where you start the season off. Really nothing great to say, nothing bad to say. Definitely potential, but those wide receiver questions are overwhelming, let's say. So I'd say you're just right on par as an average team that it has potential either way. 10% still solid, so honestly, I think that's above more. I think more teams got under 10% than over it because, and we'll get to him later, but Professor has hogged so much of the percentages. So I'd still say this team's a little bit above par, but I'm sure you're asking the same questions to yourself and might want to make moves or might want to just wait and see how this wide receiver situation shakes up. All right, I'm going to pause it for a second so that we don't lose the video. And we will continue with Paco Libre versus El Capitan. This one killed me. This one really hurt because Paco Libre, no one deserves a win like Paco Libre deserved a win this week. Unfortunately, going to 1-4, but starting Justin Herbert, fantastic start, 37 points. Emmanuel Sanders, another guy a lot of people don't start, but you got 28.2. Robbie Anderson, another guy who really didn't have too much value coming in, but another 13 targets for him, 23.5. Hunter Henry even at 12.3. There's just a lot of guys you played that really wouldn't start in a lot of leagues, but they just ended up being really fantastic picks, and you put up 181 points. I mean, just completely deserving of a win. The reason you lost was potentially your defense getting you -2 points against his defense got 13. You were able to bench Kenyon Drake, which is a great benching. I mean, he actually did decent, but compared to the guys you started, just overall fantastic management. Kills me to see Paco Libre lose and go 1-4. So unfortunately, we're still going to give you 5%. So that's better than other 1-4 teams, I believe, that we gave. So it's still a good 1-4 team, but this was a win you really needed, especially at 1-4. I mean, that's a tough spot to be in. I think your team's good. I don't think it's good enough to be like, I'm 1-4, I'm going to come back for sure. So I really wish we were talking about a win here. You deserve the win, but we're not. So you're at 5%, still alive. I don't even know about moves being needed to be made here. You're going to be getting Michael Thomas back. Debo's value should go up. Kenyon Drake's playable, honestly. I don't know if you need to make moves. I just think there's a tough loss. There's a tough loss for Paco Libre. Hopefully he bounces back. But for now, 1-4 and outside looking in. For El Capitan, win does put you to 2-3. You also deserve the win because you did this without Dak, without getting hurt injured. You played Darrell Henderson, which is a good play, another undervalued guy. The thing about this team that we're a little concerned about, despite now going to 2-3, is that some of these guys who oh wow, there's a team that I done trained. So some of these guys who might right now look good, and I done trained before the Chubb injury, before Kareem Hunt became super valuable, but A lot of these guys are losing value. So Darrell Henderson's 1-3. Cam Akers getting back healthy, so I think he's going to be regressing a little bit. Kareem Hunt will regress when Chubb gets back. CeeDee Lamb will regret without Dak Prescott. So while you actually built yourself a pretty solid team, there's some regression here. So especially since you're only 2-3 now, I still think you're also an outside looking in team. I think the win percentage for this team is still only 5%. My Dunchain confidence does continue. I think you made some impressive moves or got a couple breaks. I don't know how this Kareem Hunt thing went down, but because of the regression, I just don't think down the line you're going to be able to squeeze in. And if you do squeeze in, I don't see it as a scary playoff team. So I want to give credit to the owner. Right now, your team in its current state is good, and because you were able to pull that off, maybe you're able to pull off building a strong future state. But with the guys currently starting for you, I don't see it as a threatening team. So that's why it's at 5%, but still certainly alive. And good luck. If you could prove my Dunchain wrong, then I don't know. I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't be in this position, be recapping anyone, because that means I really know nothing. Because I only Dunchain 2 teams, but I'm still confident about it, to be honest. Okay. Next game, fourth game, is TBD versus We Went With Jared. I think that was Titties Up, Titties Down. Unless that was a different league, which would be brutal. But I'm pretty sure this is the team that had the Titties name. That, if not out of context, that will sound ridiculous if it wasn't this team. But anyway, this guy needs some running back. Someone do him a favor and get him a running back. He had to start, I don't even remember his first name, Dedrick Johnson, I think. After a good week last week, but not enough to start him. I mean, it's just clear that it's Kareem Hunt's backfield, and only got you 4.6% here. And when you look towards the bench, the running back situation is just Melvin having to come back. So hopefully you're able to get Melvin back. But you have no depth with buys. Dedrick Johnson, not a good option. So yeah, I guess that's really the summary for this team. Oh, I was surprised by benching Josh Allen and Jonnu. Somehow Josh Allen won, so I'm going to give you credit and say you're just like that. I mean, it was the right decision. Maybe just you made the right call and had Bridgewater in, and he just had a big game, which would be surprising, but maybe. But since you also benched Jonnu in favor of Eric Ebron, I'm guessing that there was some, like, I don't want to start the Tuesday night guy thing here, because Jonnu's clearly a better play, and he would have gotten you 13 more points, which would have been nice. But you won anyway. But I'm guessing that's part of it. If not, massive kudos for the quarterback decision. Tight end decision, obviously a little bit questionable right now. But with all that being said, this team is at 3-2 now, and I think it's a 10% team as well. I think it's right where you started, even percentage. You did enough. You have a pretty solid record. The situation's the depth at running back. I say if you squeeze in the playoffs and you stay top heavy with these good starters, it could be a team that's threatening. But because of the lack of depth at the RB situation, you're going to struggle through buys, and you're going to struggle if there's an injury. So if there's not, definitely threatening team. If there is, you're probably out. So with that, I think 10% is pretty fair. Certainly still alive, more than alive. Definitely contender to the playoffs, and could make noise in the playoffs if the team stays healthy. We went with Jared, gets the loss and goes to 1-4. This is a team that we really liked early on, but unfortunately, we talked about we've talked about in the past injuries, and we talked about Julio injury, Chubb injury. So we talked about being dangerous in the long term, but in the short term with this team, it's a little bit weaker. Le'Veon gets released. We'll see what situation he falls in, but probably not something he can make immediate impact. This is a team that probably needs to make a move. You have big names guy, maybe like Chubb or Le'Veon, guys who find the long-term value in those guys. Maybe able to get guys who could help you win now, like maybe Mike Davis or something who could help for a couple weeks. The other concern here is you started John Brown, who was banged up coming into it, ended up not playing, got you 0 points. That's heartbreaking to play a guy who doesn't play. So with that being said, the potential's there. I think the moves need to be made for this team also. I know I said that for a lot of teams. I definitely feel that for this team. And I view this team as a 5% team. Also alive, but outside looking in for sure, and 1-4 doesn't help. You have a team that really does reflect the 1-4 team right now, although the long-term potential, if you make the playoffs and get these guys healthy, get Chubb healthy, get Julio healthy, it's a scary team. But getting there is going to be the danger, so that's why you're at 5%. And the final matchups between Straight Knockout and Professor S. Straight Knockout with the loss to go to 2-3. We always talk about questionable starts for Straight Knockout. Like, always has to start guys who's like, wow, we had to start him. That happened again here. McKinnon with like not too much noise, too much happening in that backfield. McKinnon, there was no indication he'd be like, the heavy workload guy. And then Renfro was a really surprising start. And then Austin Hooper in the flex was a shocking start. He got you 10.7, so not awful. But a tight end in the flex has to be a stud, and Hooper's not a stud. So we're continuing to see that. Good news for you is that you'll be getting Devontae Adams back. But even with that, you're going to have probably 1 or 2 questionable calls moving forward. And Gallup now loses value without Dak. So this is another team we have concern about. You are at 2-3, so your record's a little bit better than the other teams. I'd say this is pretty on par for the 1-4 team we just reviewed in we went with Jared, but because you're at 2 and 3, we're giving you 7.5%, which is more than 5%, just because there's a better chance you get in the playoffs. I think that team's more dangerous in the playoffs, but I think you have a much better chance of making the playoffs, probably more than double percent chance of making the playoffs than that team. So just as an example, I think this is one of the teams that will be alive for a playoff spot till the end, but I just don't think it's a scary team in the playoffs. So kind of flip side of who we just reviewed. But 7.5% is certainly alive, just under where you started the season. I think because you're a little bit under 500, that's really why. I think your roster is right in the middle, talent-wise, if everyone had the same record. And then the final team, the team that hogs it all the percentage, Professor S at 5-0. He does it again, folks. There is a lot of 5-0 teams are able to just sit back and be comfortable, but I do think, I'm talking about all these bad teams that need to make a trade. I think this is the team that could take advantage of that. I think 5-0, great, you're going to make the playoffs almost definitely, especially with a strong team, but you could really separate yourself. You could afford to make a trade that might hurt you for a week or two, but gives you strength. And you have all the pieces. You have the depth. Listen to these guys on the bench. All your starting guys are actual starting guys, so that's great. But also on the bench, you have Chase Edmonds, who might overtake Kenyon Drake eventually. Dobbins even has some value. Antonio Gibson has a ton of value, and Joshua Kelly has a good amount of value also, while Eckler's injured. And then Godwin's hurt as well. So this team is deep as shit. And I think your top heavy is solid. You have some really RB1 and wide receiver one-ish guys. But I think if they're this team, you just take advantage of the teams that are doing bad, and you just make some trades that give you studs. Like, I'm talking top 5 players in each position. I would be hogging them all, trading your depth for them, sacrifice maybe the next couple weeks being a little iffy. Like, get a guy like McCaffrey, get a guy like I guess just anyone who's really solid. Derrick Henry. Just there's a bunch of potential for this team. So I'm giving the win percentage 27.5%, which is way more than anyone else. But that's also taking into account that I think this team's going to be doing that. I think Professor S is a smart guy or girl or whoever, and I think they see the opportunity in really building a dynasty here. I think if they sit with this team, I would probably give them more like 20% because they have a stronger team, but it's not like a team that really stands out a ton. The depth is what makes you stand out. It will get you to the playoffs, but once you get in the playoffs, you want those top guys, and I think this is when you take advantage of weaker teams and get their studs for your depth. Maybe Antonio Gibson and another decent player. So with that being said, Professor S is obviously the front runner because of his record, but I would not stop there. I would take advantage of other folks. For the worst teams, take advantage of and win a few games and give yourself a chance to make the playoffs. I think it could benefit everyone. So I actually don't really follow if there's trades. I probably should look if I have access, but if there is, then I'll stop saying everyone makes moves, and I'm just not keeping track of it. But if there's not, make some moves. A lot of these teams could benefit from it. So as a summary, front runner Professor S by a mile. In second is Pain Train, and everyone else is in the same neighborhood. They're 2.5. It goes from like I done chained a couple teams, but the rest of them like 5 to 10 or 12.5%. So everyone's alive. Make some moves. Make a run at it. Good luck to everyone. Have a good one.